I feel like I should have had a sparkler now that I could have just like walked across. That would have been way cooler. Good morning. Like Nate said, my name is Jill. I'm going to grab my clicker here. And I am so excited to be here. I wanted to start out by sharing 3 of my own truths that I've come to in my 32 years of life. And the first truth is that California sunshine is remarkably better than Midwest snow. It's very true. My dog looks really cute both places, though, you guys. It's really true. The second truth that I've come to is there is nothing more powerful than community. And the one in this room, you guys, thank you for making me feel safe up here doing this talk, because you really are a great, great group, and I love being here every month. And the third truth is that life is just too short to do work that you hate. Period. Now, before I get into it, I want to tell you this is not a talk where I'm trying to convince you all to quit your jobs and follow your passion for knitting kitten mittens. Although I would totally be a customer, so if anybody's going to do that, let me know. No, I want to talk about the environment that we are all in for most of our time during the day, and that is the workplace, and how we can make them better. So when you think about it, we spend more time at work than we spend with our friends and our family. We spend more time with our coworkers, our bosses. That should be something we're trying to improve. Yeah? You guys with me? Yeah. All right, awesome. So then the question really becomes, how do we make companies a better place to work? Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, I have like so many ideas on this, it's not even funny. I could be up here for like a week. So I'm gonna spare you, and I'm gonna stick to this month's theme, which I think really ties into ways that we can make the work environment better. And that's honesty. So how can more honest conversations create better work environments? Now, about 3 months ago, I started a company called Want to Work There with the goal of helping employers better attract, engage, and retain talent by creating better work environments. And since I started the company, I get the same thing said to me over and over again by leaders who have just lost an employee. And that is, I had no idea they were so unhappy. I wish they would have told me. It seems really simple, yeah? But the reality is it's really, really hard to be honest in the workplace. So, okay, show of hands, who of here has ever been unhappy in a job? Okay, now, no, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Okay, here we go. No, so now keep your hand up if instead of quitting, you decided to go have a series of honest conversations with your boss in the hopes that things would get better. Yeah, it's so hard. Honest conversations are hard no matter what. And then you add on top of that, you've got work politics, you've got busy schedules, and then there's this little thing called livelihood that sort of rests on you being able to do your job. So it's really, really hard. And so today what I want to talk about is, one, why there is some hope that I think we can start having more honest conversations in the workplace. And then we'll get on to some ways that you can do that. But there's 2 things that I see right now that really give me hope that we're moving in the right direction. And the first thing is that most bosses, contrary to popular belief, do not wake up in the morning thinking about new ways to make you miserable. I know, right? We've all had that boss. And the reality is there's like 3 things that go into bosses coming off in a bad light. One of them is that we just don't give people very much training. So we're just like, here you go, have good luck. You're a manager now, good luck. The second is that we use management as a training promotional tool. So when we use management as a promotional tool, we're basically saying, you're really good at doing X thing. So now we're gonna not have you do X thing, and we're gonna have you take care of people. Go ahead. That works, you know, right? It's so true. When you think about it, you're like, oh my God, that's so true. No, and it works for some people. Some people are meant to be managers, but the reality is that not everybody's people. So we need to think of new ways to move people up in the system without saying, oh, now you're in charge of people. And the third thing is that stress is so real, and it's a trickle-down effect. So what happens is we get people who have really, really great intentions, and they go into these leadership roles, and then the pressure builds up, and the deadlines hit, and the client needs this, and then that trickles. It's a trickle effect. So the good news is there's things we can do about all of that. The second thing is that when you really think about it, the power dynamics in business today are changing. So it is more likely than ever, it's more available than ever that you could quit your job and go make a go of it on your own. So whether that meant that you were a freelancer or even just driving for Uber, it's so much easier today than it has ever been to say, screw this, and leave. And that gives companies the incentive to be better places to work. So that power dynamic is shifting. And I really think that gives us the opportunity to have a little bit more trust and hope that we can start having some better, honest conversations. Because when a company loses an employee, it costs them usually 2 to 3 times that person's salary to replace them. That's like a scary thing. So just as scary as it is for you to lose your job, it's also really terrifying for employers to lose you. So remember that and kind of sit in that power. Okay, so what I want to do is give you guys some really actionable ways that you can kind of take this back to your work environments. So how many of you are managers? A couple? Who here is in like a functional position? So they're not managing anybody, but they show up to work every day in an office. Oh my God, you guys, it's a room of creatives. I love it. Usually it's like 75% of the room, but we'll go with like 7 of you. That's fine. All right, well, we're going to break it down. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do as a leader to help create more space for honest conversations in the workplace. And then I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do as an individual to create better work environments for yourself. All right, so thing number 1 is ask the right questions. So this seems so obvious, I'm like, duh. But the reality is we get so busy. So we get busy at work, and the questions that we start asking are more like, how's that project coming? What happened on that call last week? It's just one of those things that, you don't set out to not have the conversations, but things get busy and things get distracted. So these are actually really hard to see now on this screen. But these are 5 of the questions that I really do like to ask. And I can get these to anybody who wants them. But I think more important than the questions themselves are just 2 things that you should think about when you're asking the questions. So one is keep things open-ended. So it's one thing to ask somebody, do you love your job? Or do you like your job? And a whole nother thing to say, tell me about the thing you like most about the work you do. Because the first answer is probably going to be yes. They're probably not going to tell you no, even if they're unhappy. And the second leads to some dialogue and some ways that you can start to create more space for them to do the things that they actually like at work. And the second is to really think about where and when you're having these conversations. So who was here and saw Danny Kim last month talk about technology? Yeah, he was good. You guys, every time I look at my phone now, I question myself. What are you ignoring, Jill, that you're looking at your phone? No, but really, technology in the workplace is really hard because we all want to multitask. We all want to get more done. So my soapbox lately has been cut your meeting times in half and do not allow technology in the space with you. So instead of having a meeting for an hour where you're all on computers and texting things, only schedule 30 minutes, but be present. Because it's so much easier to open up to someone who you feel is actually listening to you. It's one of those things that we know, but we forget, and the power of it can be so, so incredible. All right, step number 2 is to foster psychological safety. So this one could take an entire hour, probably an entire day, to get through on its own, but I wanted to just bring it up and talk about it because it is probably the hardest thing to do, but it's also the most important thing to do. So who here has heard of psychological safety? A couple people? Okay. Yeah, so psychological safety, this is a definition I like. Psychological safety is the degree to which team members feel that their environment supports the risk involved in asking for help or learning from mistakes. So this came up really 2 years ago, kind of came back to the forefront of people's minds. Google did a study. They did a study on what makes a great team. How do teams function well together and what are the traits? And of everything that they studied, the thing that consistently came up when teams were getting along really well and functioning together at a high level was this concept of psychological safety. So it's a really hard thing to build an atmosphere when there are so many factors like money and politics and all these pieces, to build an atmosphere in which people feel safe. But if there's one thing that I've learned you can do, it's to lead with vulnerability. So I'm sure we have some Brené Brown fans in the audience. There's no doubt, yes. So we've all learned things through our career the hard way. If someone in this room has not learned something in their career the hard way, it's only a matter of time. So instead of trying to shove those things down and like put them behind us in shame, I would so encourage you guys to own those stories and tell them to your team. Because not only are maybe you saving them from something that they don't have to experience themselves, but you're also creating a space to say, it's okay, we're all human. Mistakes happen. And I am showing you that I'm vulnerable enough that you can also be vulnerable with me. So one way to start creating some safety in your teams. Okay, number 3 is follow through. So again, these all seem like common sense. Like you ask for feedback, you follow through. It's one of those things, though, that's really tricky. So many companies do employee surveys. Have you guys, who's filled out an employee survey at some point? Yes, you have. Everybody. And so what happens is they send out these surveys and they have such good intentions, and then nothing happens. So they send out the survey, they collect all the information, and then things get busy. So that would literally be like you asking your significant other, so what do you want for dinner tonight? And then you say pizza. And then you come home and they've made tacos. And that just happens again and again and again. And suddenly you don't care. You're like, whatever, you're gonna make tacos, do whatever you want. So the moral of the story is this is what happens when we give employees surveys or ask for feedback and then don't do anything about it. So this doesn't mean that you have to act on every single thing that you're going to, hear as feedback, but this happens so often. They're all sitting around like, what if we just don't change it all and something magical just happens? Such a good, smart theory. No, you don't have to do all the things. But if there's anything that you should do, you should at least give them the information. Tell them what you learned, good and bad. Be honest. Be open with the feedback you got. And even if you can't go all the way, we're a room of creatives. We can get creative with how we're taking the feedback. So say that you have a management team who's super craving some more training, and you don't have the budget to hire coaches to come in or to do some team building, but you could buy all of your managers the same book and do a book club every month and hold space for a discussion. So there are little things. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. The reality is make sure that you're saying to the people you're asking for the feedback, I hear you, and what you're saying is valid, and we're gonna do our best to make changes. It really goes a long way. Okay, so leaders in the room, ask the right questions. Let's try and start fostering some psychological safety, and then let's do some follow through. And that's where you're really gonna start to see some differences. Okay, so some of you are sitting here like, this is great. And I just started my job 3 weeks ago, and there's nothing I can do about any of this. No worries, I got you. I got you. Okay, so here's some things that you can start to do on your own when you're thinking about trying to make a bad situation better. So there was a BuzzFeed video a few years back about that friend that takes all the personality tests. I'm that friend. Literally, it can be like 10 minutes into meeting you, and I'm like, so tell me about your Myers-Briggs. But if there is anything I have learned from this, there is actually some good information that you can glean from these. So yes, they are generalizations, and yes, they're not completely accurate, especially when it's like BuzzFeed tells you what magical unicorn you are because you're this type of personality. But there's some really good reflection points. So what this is really a mirror for self-reflection. It's gonna talk to you about what things trigger you and what communication style works for you, and there's a lot of options. So Myers-Briggs is probably the most well-known. I am really into the Enneagram right now. Yeah, Enneagram. I love it. And then DISC usually happens at more corporate office spaces, but the amazing part about DISC is that it's not just telling you about you, it's like helping you communicate with your peers. So all of these you can get online for free. some of them easier than others, but you can find them. I did the search last night. So take some time, take one of these, and then share that information with your manager. Your manager can only communicate with you when they know how you can best be communicated with. So that's such an easy way to start a conversation and give them some extra information that makes it easier for you to interact with everybody. All right, we're stuck on personality for the rest of the day. No. Okay. So along with this, I'm also a Strength Finders junkie. Yes. Who in here has done Strength Finders? Yeah, a lot of you guys. So I learned something new about Strength Finders last night, actually, when I was doing this. So for a really long time, I've been telling people that Strength Finders is about the difference between your strengths and your skills. So your strengths are things that come naturally to you, and your skills are things that you can learn. Well, in all actuality, Strength Finders, as an assessment, was actually created to help people unearth their talents. So talents are what come naturally to you. And having a talent that turns into a strength means that you've given it enough attention to actually be able to do it consistently at near perfection. And the reason that this matters is because for so long, as managers and as humans, we really wanted to focus on what was bad. So how can we get better at that thing that we're really bad at? Well, the strengths philosophy is let's not focus on the bad. Let's focus on what makes people better where they already have natural talent. So if you haven't taken this assessment, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I think it's $20. What it will do, I used to tell people to take this all the time too if you're job searching. This gives you such great language at what you're naturally good at. It's one of those things that you read and you're like, oh, I am good at that. So it's definitely worth it. And again, if you can use your strengths during your workday, there's a bunch of stats that I don't have memorized at the moment, but you're like 87% more likely to be engaged at work if you use your skills. No, it's something like 18 or 20%, but it really can make a difference if you're unhappy in your job. Find out what your strengths are and your talents and lean into them. Find ways to use them when you're at work during the day. Okay. Last but not least, set boundaries early. This one is really hard for me. I am still learning. I grew up in Minnesota. I'm like really good at people pleasing. Literally is, oh yeah, don't you know? Yeah. It's a really hard thing to do, but as someone who burnt out really hard at my last job and crashed and burned pretty badly professionally, it's so important. It's a really big lesson that I learned. And now when I talk to people about setting boundaries, when we start a new job or start a new client project, we so badly want to prove to that person, our boss, our client, whoever it is, that we are worth what they hired us for. And so we put in the extra hours, we answer that email on a Saturday, we do that thing that maybe we wouldn't want to do, but what happens when we set that early is that it's harder to go back. So if you start by not answering emails on the weekends, it's not as big of a deal. They're like, oh, she doesn't answer emails on the weekends. If you have to go back after you've been answering emails on the weekends for 6 months, it's going to make it a lot harder. So I know not all of you are starting over, and there are definitely ways that you can start to set boundaries. My friend Brené Brown, who I'm clearly obsessed with, has this quote. She said, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. That is real. And I am giving you all permission today to set a boundary. So whatever that looks like for you, definitely make room in your day to figure out what the next boundary is that you're going to set and stick to it. Okay, share personality insights. Consider your strengths and set boundaries early. These are all ways that we can do things as individuals that make the work environment a better place. Last but not least, I want to wrap up. So a few years back, I got the chance to interview Simon Sinek, and we talked about a lot of things. And there was one thing in particular that he said to me that has stuck with me to this day. And in true Simon fashion, it's a little bit controversial, but it's real, so we're going to roll with it. So Simon said to me, we were talking about, Simon said, I see what I just did there. All right. No, so what I had asked Simon was, how does HR help foster more trust with employees? And his response to me was, HR, for the most part, especially in large companies, is a waste of skin. I know, there's HR people in the room right now who are not happy with me, but stick with me, there's a point to this, I promise. All right, and he said the reason's really simple. It's because the directors of human resources departments are not accountable to the employees. They're accountable to the management. In other words, most HR professionals are doing the right thing for their boss, not the right thing for the people. And so most people don't trust HR because everybody knows that they don't have our interests in mind. This sat with me for years because we have set up a system in which we are asking leaders to take care of people, but then not putting the ownness of what it means to take care of people on the people that they're caring for. Instead, we're making them answer to someone higher up. And what we've done is set ourselves up for failure in creating honest work environments. Because how can you be honest in a work environment that's set up in a way that's really working against you? So the reason I share this is not to leave everybody on a depressing note. It is actually to say, we are sitting in a room right now with the future of work. You guys are it. We are it. It's our time now. And as we grow into leadership roles in our own companies or start our own things, it's up to us to decide what we want that to look like. So now is the time to sort of own what you guys want the vision to look like and what you want the future of work to look like and start creating it. Thanks so much, guys.